I started investigating it, and then someone else went missing, and then someone else went missing, and then someone else went missing. So then that priority becomes the next person that goes missing.
I understand why people don't trust government sometimes, especially because, frankly, government has failed them.
The next thing I kind of remember, though, is waking up to police officers in my room.
How do you tell little children that their mother is gone? And everybody in town is saying they know who killed her.
The Forgotten, a True Crime Arizona podcast.
I was born in Chinle, Arizona. That's where my mom's family is from. My grandma, my masana, which is Navajo for grandmother, they are from Chinle, and my father's side is from Crystal, New Mexico, which is very close to Navajo, New Mexico, and that's where we lived.
What's it like growing up on the reservation?
I thought it was great. I ran cross country, and so I loved the nature. I feel like I didn't appreciate it as much until now that I'm out in the city. It was beautiful, you know, the land was beautiful. It's definitely a lot of driving because everything's so isolated. So I remember growing up, it took, you know, a long time to travel anywhere. To Chinle or even to the grocery store was about an hour away to the kind of main town. You don't go to the grocery store, it's not just right down the street. So my mother worked at the school in Fort Defiance, and we went to the schools in Fort Defiance too. I think we were, for a long time growing up, a pretty typical family. Mom, dad, myself, my brothers, and took trips to Disneyland, and I feel like we actually had a very good childhood growing up till the end. My name is Tiffany Sorrell, and I am Laverda's eldest daughter.
There's nothing glamorous or glitzy about life on the reservation. Families make do with the basic necessities. Tiffany Sorrell was somewhat of an old soul, didn't take life for granted, appreciated the small things, and was mature beyond her years. In 2002, she was only 14 and really looked up to her mom, Laverda Sorrell.
What was your mom like? What do you remember about her most?
Just her spirit, like her joy. Like she just was happy. You know, she was a happy person, and I just remember her just liking to have family around. You know, she had bins of Christmas stuff, Thanksgiving decorations, Halloween decorations, even Valentine's Day decorations, and it just was always very festive in our home.
It was July 4th, 2002, so festivities were in full swing until that changed.
Do you remember the day she went missing?
I do remember most of it. I remember I drove my brothers to the fair, which is funny because I know I was only 14. We hung out. I was a teenager hanging out with my friends and stuff, and I know I started to kind of lose a little track of time because I was getting a little bit worried, like, oh, I need to get home, we have curfew.
Tiffany knew her parents, Laverda and Edison, were out and about for the night too, celebrating a milestone.
I believe they went to dinner for their anniversary.
She dropped her friends off first, then headed home with her youngest brother.
And I remember driving back and getting a phone call from Edison and asking where we were. And I was actually kind of afraid because I thought I was gonna get in trouble because I was already late. And I was dropping kids off that I wasn't supposed to be driving around.
Like any teenager, she was worried her dad was going to be angry the second she walked in the door.
But then when we got home, nobody was there. Nobody was home. And so I at that time, I kind of just thought it was a little strange, but I wasn't too sure because we kind of, we were home alone. It wasn't a big deal when we were home alone.
So when did your dad get home that night? Do you remember that?
I don't remember.
So she went to bed, mostly feeling thankful she didn't seem to be in trouble.
The next morning, I think I might have asked, where's Mom at? Like, I just felt confused. I just was thinking, what is going on? And nobody was really saying much. And the next thing I kind of remember, though, is waking up to police officers in my room.
My name is Valina Guy. Laverda was my older sister.
Valina had been getting ready to head out on a work trip to San Antonio that next day.
I wanted to call her and let her know that I was getting ready to go, and that I'd call her and let her know how things were going once I got there. And she didn't answer. There was no answer at her home number.
Hours later, Valina landed in Texas, so she called her sister again. No answer.
There was just something that started to go off in my head a little bit, and I was like, why hasn't she called? And then I called her work, and they told me that she hadn't called in and that she wasn't there.
Something wasn't right. She never missed work. For all anyone knew, her husband, Edison, was the last person to see her. And that's when he tells his kids and Laverda's sisters that something kind of weird happened.
That night that Laverda disappeared, though, you guys had gone to an anniversary dinner, right?
Yeah, we went and ate that night, and we came back, and I guess, I don't know, she had made plans with that guy to meet up with him somewhere or whatever, and she kept wanting to leave, and then I just kept telling her, wait till the morning, I said, I can drop you off in the morning. And she said, no, I got to go right now and stuff.
Edison told his family that after their anniversary dinner, Laverda asked to be dropped off at work at the Fort Defiance School District around 11:30 p.m.
She was adamant about wanting to go that night for I don't know what reason.
Was it normal for her to ask to be dropped off at school, at her office at night?
No.
She didn't even have her work keys with her to get into the building. Her keys were later found at her home.
Days went by. Concern quickly turned to panic and desperation.
Well, now we're like 5-6 days in, and no one has seen her, no one has heard from her. Call the police, send somebody to her house right now, something's wrong. The Navajo Nation police were the first ones, and then there was some confusion about, okay, well, she went missing, according to Edison, in Arizona on a school district parking lot. But then she lives in Navajo, New Mexico, which is McKinley County, and that would be the sheriff's responsibility. So they were kind of running into one another and didn't know who should take the case or who should do what in this case. It was super frustrating, beyond words.
But she'll be back. Like, I'd just give her a few days, and then she just never returned.
That was 21 years ago. Laverda Sorrell's disappearance highlights a terrible statistic. 21 years is the average amount of time Native women go missing in Arizona. That was only the beginning of her story. It would become so much more complicated the more we learned, and sadly, her case parallels many others. What began as a documentary and podcast season to help shine light on this problem turned into a months-long search for the truth, the uncovering of systemic failure that led to even more victims than we imagined, and our persistence to get the attention of the highest government officials. And the thing is, we did get their attention. It worked. We couldn't have predicted how this was going to unfold.
It's a crisis and also an epidemic.
The acronym is MMIW, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. It's a crisis that for far too long was hidden in the shadows, but at the same time, only growing more dire. Darlene Gomez has now found herself at the center of it all.
I've spoken to a few of the Navajo Nation criminal investigators, and what they tell me, I started investigating it, and then someone else went missing. And then someone else went missing, and then someone else went missing. So then that priority becomes the next person that goes missing.
And they just start to almost add up.
They just stack upon each other. Stack, stack, stack.
Darlene is an attorney, but in 2020, the scope of her work changed.
You have reached mailbox number.
Hi, Ms. Jackson. This is Darlene Gomez.
She began working pro bono for families who have missing or murdered loved ones in Arizona and New Mexico.
How many families are you representing now?
So currently I was at 18, but I'm at around 20 right now.
All of this is pro bono?
This is all pro bono.
How are you able to do all of this pro bono? And to that end, why do it pro bono?
Because these families can't barely afford to do flyers for their loved ones and to put gas in their cars to look for them.
Darlene was one of the first people I connected with working on this project. She peeled back the first layer of where things have been going wrong.
So you may be trying to get a hold of the police, and it may take you 3 or 4 days. The police officers do not get service on their radios in certain areas of the reservation because it's so remote.
We would soon learn a lot more.
My name is Boo Nygren.
From the president of the Navajo Nation.
How do you guarantee the people of Navajo Nation that this is a safe place to live when you do have women and girls going missing?
It's going to be a very difficult task to guarantee that right now in this moment in time. But I've heard the stories, I've heard about people making phone calls and not being taken seriously, because as president, there might be times where I feel like the rest of the world needs to hear the story as well, so that we're not constantly just acting as if everything is fine. And that's one of the things I'm not going to do, is act as if nothing is fine, because if those are the stories that are being heard, everybody else should hear those stories.
From the Navajo Nation police chief.
Any district at any given time, we may have 2 to 4 officers on shift covering an area of a particular district that's 5,000 to 7,000 square miles. It's the system. The system is broken, and we're a part of that system.
From lawmakers and top officials.
The data doesn't exist, and it's really hard to get state funding without data.
Arizona is the 3rd worst in the country for missing and murdered Indigenous people. 3rd worst. We have the 3rd highest number in the country, behind Oklahoma and Alaska. That is not okay. It's not acceptable.
You know it's spiraled out of control when state leaders admit their offices have been part of the problem. And eventually, we'd learn how it became this bad as our investigation went on.
I understand why people don't trust government sometimes, especially on this issue, because frankly, government has failed them. Government has failed them over the last decade or two.
The result? Families torn apart. Children lost, confused, and scared. Those who would listen, trying to pick up the pieces.
How do you tell little children that their mother is gone? And everybody in town is saying they know who killed her, but the police are letting that person continue to walk and victimize other people in your small community. Those are the hard conversations. Or when they say, Miss Darlene, when's my mom coming home? And all you can tell them is like, I don't know. We're looking for her. We want her to come home.
One of the 20 families Darlene Gomez represents is the Sorrell family. Tiffany and her 2 brothers were once those young children Darlene was describing. And while Tiffany looks back on most of her childhood with happy memories before her mom disappeared, not everything was so perfect.
When did you notice some sort of shift in your parents' relationship or maybe the family dynamic?
It was until probably middle school. 8th grade, around there, is when they started to fight a lot. My brothers would come into my room when they were arguing, and they would, come and sleep with me at night because it would kind of scare them. And even cases of holes being punched in the wall. And so that's when things started to really, you can tell that she wasn't happy. He started trying to bring her flowers and buy her jewelry, and I think he even tried to appeal to her parents, like help me win her back, and but it was kind of little too late at that point, I think, and I think once he kind of realized that he wasn't going to win her back, he pretty much gave her the ultimatum that, well, you can leave, but you need to leave the kids here. You're not taking the kids with you. The kids stay with me, go ahead and leave.
And how did that go over?
I think that's what made her stay longer, but it did not go well because there was times where he would lock her out. Sorry. It's okay. I'm just remembering my brother's crying at the window, at the door, because he wouldn't let her in. And my little brother actually sneakily unlocked it for her, and she was able to get back inside, but it was pretty tumultuous at that time. At my 8th grade graduation, I remember looking at her and thinking, like, she's not smiling in these pictures compared to the other pictures where she was always smiling. But in my 8th grade year, during my promotion, I remember she was a lot more quiet and not didn't seem as happy.
Then, the bombshell.
It eventually came out that she was having an affair. We actually met him before, me and my brothers. Yeah, I was a little annoyed because it seemed like I was thinking, leave first and then start. What you want to start was my thought with her.
Valina said eventually their whole family knew Laverda was having an affair. There wasn't much of an attempt to keep it a secret. But because of how Laverda and Edison were married, this was more complicated.
They had had a traditional wedding, a Navajo wedding. And so my older brother had talked to her and told her, because of the way that they were brought together in that union, culturally she would have to go and explain to my parents what was happening and what she had wanted to do. And so she told my parents.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. She announced that she wanted a divorce.
Tiffany already saw that writing on the wall.
They eventually sat me down and told me that they were going to get a divorce. And I remember thinking, I think I kind of chuckled a bit. And they were kind of like, no, this is like serious. But I kind of thought like, well, finally. I mentioned we met her boyfriend, and it kind of just seemed like, well, I guess this is where it's going. And like I felt like, all right, they're gonna get a divorce, and I was okay with that because I thought now the fighting would stop.
So that July 4th anniversary dinner was going to be the last Laverda and Edison would celebrate together.
I was talking to her about, why don't we work this out, why don't we do this? And she told me, she says, I'm afraid of that guy. He can do stuff. And I said, what do you mean by that? And she said, she wouldn't tell me specifically. And I told her, what does he mean? Is he threatening you? Is he threatening the kids? And she said, no, he knows stuff.
What did that mean? It definitely didn't sound good. But from Edison's point of view, this affair wasn't new. In fact, both Edison and Tiffany told me Laverda would frequently go spend time with that man. So when she asked to be dropped off at the school district that night after dinner, Edison didn't like it, but he wasn't necessarily surprised.
This was an ongoing thing for a whole year, and she was leaving for months at a time, wanting to come back, and she comes back. Then she leaves again, and she comes back. So it was kind of a routine thing. So when she left that night, I didn't think of anything, because she's done that before.
But when she didn't come back, all he could feel was guilt.
I would cry, thinking about it, wondering what's going on. Then I think about all the ifs. Maybe I shouldn't have taken her that night. I should have made her stay. There's all these ifs, and I was blaming myself for the longest time,
In Navajo culture, the eldest daughter is typically kind of like the second mom. And so that's essentially what happened when she left.
With the investigation just beginning, Tiffany had to grow up in the blink of an eye.
How hard was it to grow up in those formative years without your mom?
It's still hard. It was very hard. Like I mentioned, the eldest daughter is always kind of the second mom. And so I end up taking on that role for my younger brothers, where I would even go to their parent-teacher conferences. And I would help them with their homework. I would take them to school, pick them up from school, cook for them, buy them school clothes. And I remember trying to, I know this sounds so minimal, but buy my younger brother socks. Like, I had no idea. How do you pick out what size socks do you even wear? How do you know what size socks to get, I guess? And I remember I went in and I bought, I think these will fit you. And he tried them on and they didn't fit, so I had to go take them back. I'm like, I think these are gonna be better, and they didn't fit. And so by the third time, the salesperson was like, I can't keep letting you return socks. And so luckily I found some that fit, but I would even work summer jobs, and the money that I would earn at those jobs, I would help my brothers with their school clothes.
It was the weight of the world on a 14-year-old's shoulders, a burden Tiffany never should have had to carry. While Tiffany was handling the emotional aftermath, the rest of her family was knee-deep in the law enforcement investigation, because now the FBI was involved.
And that's what I told the FBI, that, she was concerned about him, that he knew stuff.
And that was the number one question. Who truly was this man she was having an affair with? And why did Laverda go to meet him at the school district late at night?
We didn't even know if that was really the last place that she was seen.
Slowly, Laverda's family would uncover details that deepened the mystery even more. The case was about to take a sharp and pointed turn.
So, when the FBI told us that they were going to go from a missing persons case to a homicide, I knew that they were finally on the right track.
Coming up on episode 2 of The Forgotten.
So this is an interesting interview because we didn't expect to be interviewing you today.
We have funding for more officers. The problem is hiring officers. It's the system. The system is broken, and we're a part of that system. We're doing what we can to fix how we do business, but we need everybody else to do the same.
Going missing isn't necessarily a crime because adults can leave at their own free will.
We're actually on our 5th FBI investigator, and we really don't know what they are doing. We really don't know what they're uncovering or what they're investigating. We're just told that we need to be patient and that let us do our job.
True Crime Arizona, the podcast, is hosted by me, Brianna Whitney, and produced by Sergio Hernandez. It's a production of Arizona's Family, 3TV, CBS 5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.
This is True Crime Arizona, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.